Okay, what are the headlines? We have news from Africa, Australia, Europe. We're going to start with Africa with some extremely positive news from Gabon. So Gabon, articles from Quartz Africa, BBC, as well as the Financial Times. Great news about Gabon. BBC is saying that Gabon has become the first African country to receive payment for reducing carbon emissions by protecting its rainforest.
So I and other people started sort of working on how to find a balance between forestry and protected areas. And so we came up with a plan in 2002 to create the national parks. And we were lucky enough to meet with Omar Bongo, then president of Gabon. Mm-hmm. We showed him some of the amazing photographs Nick Nichols, National Geographic photographer, had taken walking with Mike Fay across Congo and Gabon. Mm-hmm. And within weeks, the president, he saw, I think it was the first time he'd seen something new in a while. He was inspired by the images, and we had the Rio +10 WSSD Sustainable Development Conference coming up, and within a month we'd created 13 national parks. And so we went from parks to banning the log export to pushing for sustainable use of timber. And we've had two extremely kind of bright, visionary heads of state who got it. We've tried not to be so desperate to develop that we do it at n'importe quel prix, no matter what cost for future generations.
So according to the article, Gabon has been able to show that it managed to reduce deforestation or lower its carbon emissions in 2016 and 2017 compared to the previous decade. But I understood it was based on a formula relating to the number of tons of carbon that would otherwise have been released.
The fact that we put in place the Gabonese Space Agency to monitor deforestation from satellite imagery. Mm-hmm. I am responsible for a lot of that, and it's based on that science that we were able to do the deal with Norway. And now Gabon is one of the highest forest cover countries on the planet, 88% rainforest, and we have one of the lowest deforestation rates, less than 0.1%. So it's very difficult for us to reduce our emissions much. But the way Gabon's doing it is we're looking more at our net absorption of CO2. We absorb 100 million tons of carbon dioxide more than we emit. And so we have been paid to reduce emissions, but in doing so, we've increased the amount of CO2 we take out of the atmosphere every year. So what Norway is getting is a net removal of CO2 from the atmosphere. We're not reducing emissions, but still emitting. To paying a country to increase the amount of CO2 we're taking out of the atmosphere, that's a real contribution to climate change.
Okay, as the government is very much championing its ecosystem, its forests, could this initiative inspire other regions, other countries in Africa to also be more conscious of their ecosystem? Minister White has worked across the forest zone of Africa, from Sierra Leone all the way to Uganda. In other words, does he think this could be replicated and applied elsewhere on the continent?
If we lose Congo Basin, we're heading for a 4 or 5 degree increase, not a 1.5 or 2 degree increase. So the answer to your question is we have to find a mechanism to make sure these forests survive. Can we take the Gabon example and replicate it across the Congo Basin? Not at $5 a ton. Today in the EU, the carbon price has just gone over 60 euros a ton. So it costs you 60 euros to buy dirty, I say that for effect, dirty, carbon coal-fired emissions from coal power generation in Europe, but you only pay $5 a ton for pristine rainforest carbon that's preserving elephants and gorillas and biodiversity, and it's creating the rainfall in the Sahel and the rainfall in the Egyptian highlands, and it's keeping the Blue Nile flowing, and it's maintaining agriculture in Egypt and avoiding 100 million Egyptians moving into Europe. But my carbon's only worth $5, and your dirty carbon's worth $60. So that needs to change. I worked in Sierra Leone in the early 80s, and the beautiful forest villages that had crystal clear forest streams flowing within 50 meters of their village are now sending children to walk 10 kilometers to fetch water because all of their streams have dried up because they cut the rainforest down. So if we can create a mechanism to encourage them to replant the forest and restore those ecosystem services, we can help people adapt to climate change at the same time as we're fighting climate change.
Okay, some good news for the Australian government. The Great Barrier Reef has avoided a rating at the UNESCO vote, and that the rating was in danger. Now, there was a pressure to impose that rating from scientists and celebrities. There was a letter published by 13 public figures, under which Jason Momoa, also known in the movies as Aquaman and Conan, and ocean explorer Philippe Cousteau, and also royalty, Prince Albert II, sovereign prince of Monaco. And they pushed the committee to endorse UNESCO's recommendation. And in the letter, and I quote, "The reef's immense beauty and biodiversity have inspired millions around the world, but its future is at stake. The climate emergency is already evident in the Great Barrier Reef. Over the past 5 years, 3 severe coral bleaching events fueled by global warming have caused mass coral mortality. But they say there is still time to save the Great Barrier Reef. But Australia and the world must act now." The government scrambled to keep its status. They did so via a flurry of last-minute lobbying, including taking the ambassadors on a snorkeling trip to the reef. And it has worked because the committee decided not to place the reef on the list of in danger. So instead, it's asking for a report on efforts to conserve the reef. Okay, not so good news. Liverpool's waterfront or docks has been stripped of UNESCO World Heritage Site status, and the UK government has failed to fulfill its obligations to protect and conserve the site. And I quote, "Inadequate governance processes, mechanisms and regulations have resulted in a significant loss to the authenticity and integrity of the site." And they mention in particular the approved planning for Everton's proposed £500 million stadium at Bramley Moor Dock. This has added to the ascertained threat to the waterfront's outstanding universal value and signals a lack of commitment to protect the property in the long term. Also, in Victoria in Australia, people and companies that are caught releasing balloons in the air, they will now be slapped with fines. And this is up to 16,000 Australian dollars for an individual, 82,000 Australian dollars for a company. And the reason is that balloons are the #1 deadliest form of litter when ingested by seabirds. And balloons that are floating in the water, they can look like squids, they can look like jellyfish and seals and other animals. They have been known to become entangled in the ribbon of these balloons. Now, good initiative, and let's hope this will go global.